Watching old movies in the age of the virus, it's easy to be shocked by all the gratuitous touching. And by old, I mean anything recorded before March 2020, when people were still squeezing past each other to get to the bar, exchanging grimy notes and coins and passing drinks back and forth with their dirty bare hands. Not a sanitizer in sight. Did we really live so close together? Well, yes, we did. And we were quite happy doing so. It's a measure of how well we have internalized the reason for staying apart that casual pre-coronavirus intimacy now looks so alien. The change is cultural, not political, and won't be undone by government decree. Even when some shops are allowed to trade or schools to partially reopen, the duty to be distant will remain for as long as contagion is a risk. In the absence of a vaccine, that risk is open-ended. It will be a while before strangers shake hands again. Maybe the habit will be lost. This is not a superficial aspect of the COVID-19 crisis. Societies are shaped by custom and ritual as much as they're held together by legislation. There is no law against queue barging, for example, but we Brits still respect the queue and have a keenly developed sense of justice around that issue. And many others too. And we're being forced to queue at some length, and that's very testing for Londoners, like me, who are always in a hurry, but at least most of us are being patient. But for how long will that last? Analysis by King's College London found that Britons fall into one of three groups depending on their response to the virus lockdown: the acceptor, the sufferer, and the resistor. Which one do you think you are? The largest group, around 48% of the UK, have accepted the new way of life during the virus outbreak, while around 44% are suffering and 9% are resisting. The large bulk of the population are fully behind the measures, but even within this group, there are still clear dividing lines between those who are coping pretty well and those who are really suffering. Nearly all of this suffering group have felt more anxious and depressed, and 6 out of 10 are losing sleep. People aged 55 to 75 are the biggest proportion of the accepting. Those acceptors are more likely to have voted Conservative and supported Brexit, and only 28% of them said they are potentially facing financial difficulties as a result of the lockdown, the lowest of all the groups. Nearly 2/3 of those suffering are women. According to the National Centre for Social Research, the long-term rise in mental health problems among young women in England is about poverty and non-suicidal self-harm. It found that 1 in 5 women with severe money problems had self-harmed in the past year, and that women from the most deprived backgrounds were 5 times more likely to harm themselves than those from well-off backgrounds. The study also noted that the suicide rate in girls and women aged between 10 and 24 is the highest on record, which is particularly worrying given the evidence to suggest young women will be among those hit hardest by the economic effects of the pandemic. Evolutionary biologists have also observed a cross-cultural and historical correlation between the prevalence of infectious diseases and authoritarian politics. The theory suggests that pathogen stress leads to a more aggressive behavioral immune response, making societies less open, less tolerant, and readier to sacrifice liberties for collective protection. That might sound like a wild extrapolation from 2-meter gaps at the supermarket checkouts, and I don't think lockdown will activate some dormant genetic predisposition to tyranny. The opposite response feels closer to the surface. Our pent-up social energies one day exploding onto the streets in a licentious, touchy-feely carnival. But that release might be further away than we hope. Meanwhile, it doesn't take an evolutionary biologist to hypothesize that chronic insecurity plows fertile ground for toxic politics. So, some political analysts are warning that nationalism could well be a byproduct, not just of social isolation, but also of economic hardship. One upside, though, could be a period of intense creativity. I've just produced an agenda show about well-being, and one of my guests, Dr. Sandy Mann, says that for many people, the boredom of being locked down for so long will mean they start to get creative. We could, she says, be moving towards a new renaissance, a rebirth of the creative arts. Who knows? History is not destiny, so it's reasonable to presume that 21st century societies will find innovative ways to manifest the consequences of mass anxiety. And for a start, we have the digital infrastructure that means a lot of life in lockdown has migrated online. We are now zooming deep into culturally reinforced comfort zones. It doesn't have to be that way. The antidote to polarization is solidarity, and there's heaps of that around. The weekly ritual of doorstep applause for the National Health Service is rightly cherished as an expression of communal spirit to transcend isolation. Images of those moments will be displayed as icons of national togetherness for generations, like the photos of Londoners seeking shelter from the Blitz in underground tube stations, except there won't be so many people jammed together in the future. Repairing the damage done by this disease will be a project of cultural reconnection, not just economic redistribution. We will need new ways to feel joined for as long as we cannot take each other by the hand.